Welcome, I'm Bill Wake. This is my summary of the work we've done on Twitch this week. We're working on a set of tools for dulcimer players, and our current focus is a chord chart. This past week, we made the chord chart know a chord spelling, the notes in it. We added the tuning to the left of the fretboard to tell you like DAD or EBG or whatever it is. We draw the notes on the dulcimer as shapes, and we have different shapes for the root, third, fifth, or seventh of the chord. So that'll help you distinguish those as you work out fingerings. Let's see a demo and take a code walkthrough. All right, so the chord chart, last week we just had this fretboard up at the top, and now we've worked out the chords a bit more. So we filled in the chord notes, so D major is D, F sharp A, D seventh is D, F sharp C, and so on. And then we added these shapes to the fretboard, so the root of the chord gets a circle, the fifth of the chord gets a square, the third gets a triangle, and if it's a seventh chord, it gets a diamond for the seventh note. All right, now most of the week was working out these placements, working out the chord notes, and then coordinating them and tweaking and adjusting until things were looking like we wanted them. And let's see some code. All right, so the first thing was the chord chart had to tell us the notes for the chord. So we're looking for like D minor, and minor is the quality. All right, and so for a given quality, we have the pattern that was up here. So major, start at the root, go up 4 half steps to the third, go up 3 more half steps to the fifth. Minor, you only go up 3 half steps, and so on for all of the chords. We're going to deal with these 5 types, and we have the patterns for each. So once you have the pattern, we'll take the keys, which are like root, third, fifth, or seventh, and we'll map them so that each key turns into a chord tone, a chord note. So this is going to give not just the shape now, we have the actual letter, note letter that's going to be there. So we take the root of the chord plus the key, the pattern for that, which is 4 half steps or 7 half steps or whatever it is, and that gives us the actual position in the chord. So D chord up 4 half steps is F sharp, and so this becomes an F sharp, and the interval is which of these qualities or which of these steps in the chord is at the root, third, fifth, or seventh. Once we have all those notes, we sort them into order by the interval. So the root comes first and the third next, and so on. All right, so given that, we had enough information to write the note names in the main chord view there. All right, now the drawing part. Okay, so we had this about half done last week. So we drew the strings, we drew the frets, and we drew the fret indices, the little numbers over the top. And this week we added drawing the tuning, and assuming there's a chord, drawing the chord notes. Okay, so we'll look at the tuning first. Well, I guess I should point that out here. So that's these notes here to tell us what the string values are. So if this is D, 0 is D, 1 is E, 1.5 is F, 2 is F sharp, and so on. Okay, so let's look at the tuning first. All right, so we're basically going to walk through the strings, and for each string we get its name, which is like D-A-D. D is the name. We set the font and color, and we draw it in the right position. And the right position is the fretboard will tell us what's the Y position for a given index. So the first string is on top, and the second string's in the middle, and the third string's on the bottom. So give us 0, 1, or 2, and we'll tell you where that should be drawn on the Y side. And then the X side is just the font size divided by 2. We're just sliding it over a little bit so it centers. Okay, we do that for each note, and we're all set. All right, and then draw chord notes. Well, we basically created a class to delegate that to, because the chord shape stuff was big enough and confusing enough. It belonged in its own class. All right, so to do that work, you're going to need the tuning and the fretboard. The tuning tells you what strings there are. The fretboard tells you how far apart do you go between half steps. And we pass a drawing function that says how do you draw the chord, which is fill in its path with a color. And then finally the finger width, how big is the dot or the shape? And we call it draw notes on strings method. So to draw notes on strings, we go through the strings, and for each string, we're going to catch its index and its actual name or note value. And then we walk through each note of the chord and draw that note. So if the chord was D, there's D, F sharp, and A. We're going to look at all the D's, F sharps, and A's. And in our fretboard with 10 frets, you got D, F sharp, A, D, F sharp again. So we don't quite have 2 octaves there, but an octave and a half is enough to get us a few of those notes. All right, now how do you draw a chord note? Well, the challenge there is the same note might occur twice. So mostly we've been tracking notes without reference to which octave it is. But now if the same note is on the fretboard in 2 positions, we want to make sure we draw both those. So we ask the fretboard what positions contain this note on this string, and then for each one we're going to call our drawing function on the interval path, which corresponds to well, it works out the shape and placement of what you're going to draw. All right, so interval path, it's really got 2 parts. The first is we want to decide what kind of shape to use. So the root gets a circle, the third gets a triangle, the 5th gets a rectangle, and the 7th gets a diamond, which is a rectangle rotated 45 degrees. Okay, and then once you've chosen your shape, you're going to draw it basically to the size of the finger width and height, and then we have to offset it. Well, we're going to go to the X position is going to be offsetted corresponding to the frets. So, you know, how they go across, that's the X, and then the Y corresponds to the string position. So our fretboard can compute that. Basically, if you give it a size of a rectangle, it's going to draw in, you know, and we have 20 notes, 20 half steps in our range, then it shows where those go. Okay, and with that, between the shape and the drawing, and then back here in fretboard view, the context fill applies the color. So we have the color our finger will be, you know, and that draws it out, and that makes it all work. So coming up next week, we want to figure out all the possible chord positions, things like 002, 234, 200, 432. You know, it's all kind of symmetric in this layout. It doesn't have to be, but it is in DAD. So we want to make sure each note, each chord has a note, a root, a third, and either a 5th or a 7th. We want to make sure the chord is reachable, you know, in a reasonable person's hand. Some of them are pretty stretchy. And if you have an open string, it doesn't hurt the reachability. So I could play 0, 7, 9, even though I can't reach from 0 to 9, I can reach 7 and 9, and the 0 is the open string, so I can play that as a chord if I wanted to. All right, and then once we have those chord layouts worked out, we'll display those underneath that revised fretboard, and then we'll add something to choose the fretboard. It could be plain, kind of original dulcimer, add the 6.5, add the 1.5 beyond that, or chromatic, which is more like a piano having all the notes. And then the tuning, I don't know how many tunings to list, but it's going to be at least 10 or so. Kind of DAD is the most common. DAA comes in a distant second, and then all the others show up somewhere. If you want to play minor tunings, usually you'll use like DAC or something like that. There are tunings that fit for minor better. Yeah, so we'll be able to select those. We've done everything in a kind of musical and mathematical sense. So defining the fretboard and the tuning, we've worked out all those chord patterns and all that stuff will all just work. So it's mostly identifying these and laying out the possibilities. I don't think it'll be too bad as far as actually making that part work. All right, so I hope we finish that this coming week. We'll see. Or you can join us Monday through Thursday, 2 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time or 7 to 9:30 p.m. UTC. xp123.com/Twitch will bounce you to the live session when it's on, and xp123.com/YouTube takes you to the old sessions, time delayed a couple weeks and lightly edited. I hope you can join us sometime. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.